So, I'm going to give two speeches this evening. I'll give you a little introduction to the first speech, which is all about the Oscars or the Academy Awards. So, there's not much vocabulary that I have to give you. I'll just give you one piece of vocabulary, which is AMPAS, A-M-P-A-S, which is explained in the speech. It's the full name for the Academy that presents the Oscars. And the other one is Kevin Hart, who I mentioned. You might know he's an American comedian. And there are some other famous people, but I think they're famous enough that you should know them. Okay, so we all ready? Let's go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you'll all know that the Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars, took place the other night, on Sunday night. And this year, the period leading up to the Academy Awards was full of controversy. The Academy announced lots of changes and then backtracked, and there was controversy surrounding who was going to host and all sorts of things, and it was just a little bit of a mess this year. So many people have said, critics of the Oscars, the Academy Awards, have said that the Academy is currently going through an identity crisis. It doesn't really know what it is anymore. It doesn't really know why it should exist. But before I talk about that, I think it might be a good idea to talk about the Academy itself. What are we talking about when we refer to the Academy? Well, we're talking about AMPAS, and that is the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So it's an organization which represents the film industry, filmmakers, and it's made up of members. You need to be invited to join the Academy. You can't just say, oh, I fancy being part of the Academy, I'll join. No, you have to be invited, and people have to vouch for you, and they say, oh yes, this person is very serious and they work in the film industry. And there are a lot of members. There are 6,687 members in total. And these 6,687 members come from 17 branches. So the branches are the different parts of the film industry. So if you are a little bit of a film geek like I am, and you stay to the end of the film to watch the credits, you'll know what some of the branches are already. So we've got obvious ones like directing, acting, writing, but then maybe less obvious ones like editing, cinematography, and costume design. So these people all make up the Academy Awards. And in order to explore this identity crisis, I think we need to go back in time a little bit. So we'll go back to 2016. And you may remember in 2016 there was a hashtag which was very popular, which was hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. And the reason for this hashtag was because all of the actors in the four main acting categories were white. There were no people of color whatsoever. And around the same time, a survey was carried out by the Los Angeles Times, the newspaper, of 5,000 Academy members. So that's quite a few members. Remember, there are around 6,000 Academy members. 5,000 of them were surveyed by the Los Angeles Times. And it showed that 94% of the members were white, 77% of them were male, and 86% of them were over 50 years old. So we're talking about quite a homogeneous group here. It's not the most diverse voting body. In order to remedy this, AMPAS took a few measures, and one of them was to invite new members, more diverse members. So they invited 683 members in 2016, and around half of these new members were women and people of color. A second problem which is leading to this identity crisis is the television audience. So there are other ceremonies, other big award ceremonies, the Golden Globes, the BAFTAs. In your countries, I'm sure there are plenty, the César, the Goya, the Magritte here in Belgium. But the Oscars are still the most famous and the best known. And they attract a huge audience. They typically attract 30 to 40 million viewers in the United States alone. So it's a very big television event. However, the channel which broadcasts the Oscars in the United States, ABC, wants to attract more viewers, and especially wants to attract younger viewers, because we know that the young demographic brings with it advertising revenue, So everyone's after young people, young viewers. And the Academy has tried to make some changes in order to encourage younger people to watch the Oscars, but once again, this has backfired. So how have they tried to attract younger viewers? Well, one thing they've tried to do is to invite young celebrities and actors along to the Oscars to present, even when they're not nominated, they go along. So people from, for example, superhero films, the big Marvel comic book films. And another thing they've tried to do is to have young, kind of cool presenters or presenters for the ceremony, hosts. And this year they invited an African-American comedian called Kevin Hart to present. And that seemed great. He was a young guy, he's African-American, so he's appealing to a different demographic. However, it was uncovered that Kevin Hart had made some offensive remarks about the LGBTIQ community. He'd tweeted that he didn't want his son to grow up gay. And obviously a lot of people were offended by these remarks, and they forced him, or they strongly encouraged him, to step down. Kevin Hart refused to apologize and ended up leaving his job as host. So this year there was no host. The second thing that they've tried to do is to make the ceremony shorter. Now, there are 24 awards in total. Every winner gets up and makes a little speech. I'd like to thank my parents, I'd like to thank the Academy, I'd like to thank my dog, etc., etc. So that goes on and on. Then there are musical numbers. There's a monologue usually by the host at the beginning. So it's very hard to make it a short, snappy ceremony. It typically goes on for 3 to 4 hours. So once again, ABC and the Academy were saying, well, we need to make it shorter because young people won't watch if it goes on forever. So one measure that the Academy took this year was to not present all the awards on camera. They said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll present 4 awards during the commercial break. And it was 4 awards that were not considered important. So I can't remember the exact awards. I think it was cinematography, costume design, and something else. Well, this created an uproar among filmmakers. They said, you know what? This isn't right. I wouldn't be able to make my film without my cinematographer. I wouldn't be able to work without my costume designer. These elements, they might not seem important to people watching at home, but to us filmmakers, they're really the backbone of the film. You wouldn't believe the film if the person wasn't wearing the right costume, or if the image wasn't, projected in the right way. So it's very important. And there was also, of course, a hashtag, going back to Oscars So White. This time, the hashtag was present all 24. So present all 24 awards. And then there was another controversial announcement, another mishap by the Academy, and that was about the musical performances. So typically there are 5 songs nominated for Best Song, and the Academy said, you know what, we'll cut out some of the song performances. We'll only invite 2 of the nominees to perform. Well, this was scrapped very quickly because one of the nominees, who ended up winning, a young singer-songwriter who you might know called Lady Gaga, said that she was not going to perform if the other nominees were not invited. So something else to like Lady Gaga for. And there's yet another initiative put forward by the Academy to try to attract a younger audience, and that's to change the type of film that gets nominated. Now, this might seem like a strange thing to say, but every year there are jokes in the media, or the host of the Oscars, him or herself, sometimes makes a little remark about the type of film that's typically nominated. So going back to the makeup of the Academy, the composition of the Academy, they tend to have a preference for historical dramas, films about presidents, about kings and queens, World War II dramas, or basically anything involving a straight white man, which is basically what the Academy is made up of, so it reflects their lives very well. In order to remedy this and to attract different types of films, into the Academy Awards, AMPA's decided to create a new category this year, which is Best Popular Film. And this seemed like a good idea, I guess, because they wanted to create a category for comic book films, superhero films, the big budget blockbuster films that most people go to see. And it was especially seen to accommodate a film which did very well last year, Black Panther, which made $1.3 billion around the world. However, this decision was also criticized for a number of reasons. First of all, it's very hard to say what a popular film is. Does a popular film mean a film that makes a lot of money? Is it a film that most people can relate to? Is it a film that a lot of people have seen? What does popular actually mean? And secondly, the fact that the film that would potentially have won the award, Black Panther, was going to be in this different category was controversial because it was a film about black people with mainly black actors. So some people saw it as a form of racial segregation, that you were putting kind of the black film in a different award category. So once again, the Academy decided to scrap that new award. But despite all of that, Black Panther still did very well. It was nominated for Best Picture, so it didn't need its own category. And it also won a number of awards. It won costume design and music. So it really didn't need its own category. So a lot of changes within the Academy. And this year the ceremony went ahead. It went ahead without a host. And actually the ratings were better than last year. So maybe a host is not the most important thing. But the problems that I've described in this speech haven't disappeared. They will resurface next year. The membership of the Academy is changing, and the tastes of the Academy are also changing. So, for example, in the past few years, we've had films which have won, which are not typical Oscar films, not the films that I described earlier on. They're not, historical dramas or about kings and queens. So a few years ago, you might remember there was a film called Moonlight, which was an LGBT drama. It was a drama about a young gay man from an African American background, and that won Best Picture. So you can see that things are changing, but we just don't know how they're going to change. And the changes that I outlined earlier on, the Best Popular Film category, for example, those changes are still being discussed, and they may come into effect. So watch this space for next year. There might be a very different Oscar ceremony. Thank you.